Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today's presentation is for my cross-cultural understanding midterm exam. This presentation will be divided into two parts: a study in intercultural communication and an analysis of business success through communication in a cross-cultural environment. Enjoy! Before we start, please take a look at the content table of the first part. Now, let's move on to the definition of intercultural communication. Here are the definitions according to experts. According to Sobre and Ehmer, intercultural communication is the study of interactions between people from different cultural backgrounds where their different perceptions and symbolic systems can affect their communication. Meanwhile, according to Chen, intercultural communication is a dynamic exchange where people employ language, symbols, strategies to convey and comprehend meaning. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Here are the reasons why intercultural communication is important in today's globalized world. The first reason is building global understanding and cooperation. According to Sarwari et al., examples are assisting people understand different values, beliefs, and perspectives in a globalized world. The second example is encouraging mutual respect and reducing cultural misunderstandings in education, business, and societies. And the last example is supporting international teamwork in overcoming global challenges such as climate issues and migration between countries. The second reason is enhancing inclusive digital and social networks. According to Janto and Aryani, the examples are creating effective teamwork in international organizations, preventing miscommunication in digital communication between languages and cultural norms. And lastly, creating inclusive global networks and making the international partnerships stronger. The last reason is supporting adaptation in multicultural settings. According to Dalip et al., the examples are preparing people to work efficiently in abroad or multicultural environments, improving cross-cultural competence in migration, education, and tourism, and lastly, encouraging empathy, tolerance, and openness when engaging with different cultures. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Here are the challenges that may occur when people from different countries with different cultures interact. The first challenge is language barriers. According to Janto and Aryani, the examples are different meanings and loss of nuances. Many words and idioms cannot be translated the same across cultures because automatic translations often forget cultural expressions and tone. The consequence of this challenge is misunderstanding or confusion even when people speak the same language. The second challenge, according to Janto and Aryani, is differences in communication norms and etiquette. The examples are varied communication styles and different rules. Some countries value directness, while the other ones prefer indirectness. Additionally, some countries also have different rules about communication, such as who speaks first, how to greet, and formality levels that are different across cultures. The result of this challenge is miscommunication or unintended offense and cross-cultural interactions. The third challenge, according to Dojijanto and Aryani, is digital and technological inequality. Some of the examples are unequal access and information gap between countries. As we all know, not every country has the same or equal internet or device availability. Additionally, some countries cannot access or share the same online content. The result of this challenge is limited participation in intercultural or global communication. The last challenge, according to Sarwari et al., is cultural misunderstanding and stereotyping due to different perceptions and stereotyping. People from many countries tend to interpret behavior based on their own culture. Additionally, some people judge others through bias or cultural assumptions in their country. The result of this challenge is prejudice, ethnocentrism, and the breakdown of mutual comprehension. Now, let's move on to the next slide. As you can see from the slide, a real-life example of successful intercultural communication in business is the McDonald's franchise. On this occasion, we are going to discuss about McDonald's solutions to intercultural communication challenges while expanding their branches in India. The first one is creating local menus that suits the taste of the Indians in their daily lives. Second, they model their franchise based on the Indian cultures and lifestyle and create local partnerships with the local suppliers for their menus. And lastly, they create strategy for their pricing and marketing, such as making the price affordable and family-friendly and creating menus for local celebrations. Now that we have finished the first part, let's move on to the second part. Before we start the second part, please take a look at the content table. Now, let's move on to effective communication contributions to business success. Here are the contributions of effective communication to business success, according to Musheke and Piri. The first one, improving whole organizational performance and productivity by ensuring accurate information sharing to make decisions. Second, encouraging employee engagement, motivation, and teamwork. The third, reducing conflict, misunderstandings, and costly mistakes while protecting service quality and operational efficiency. Number 4, uniting stakeholders on objectives and strategies through timely and clear messages while supporting effective strategy implementation. And lastly, the communication channels choice and management style influence how effective communication is and therefore affect business results. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Here are the role of cultural awareness, teamwork, leadership communication, and integration in international business. According to Badruka School Management and Simon, cultural awareness assists prevention of misunderstanding in global workplaces, creating stronger relationships and adaptations to local norms, and developing business performance and global competitiveness. As an example, adapting negotiation techniques across cultures prevents conflicts. According to Monash University Research and Technolery, teamwork brings different ideas and innovation. However, the challenges are language barriers, time orientation, and hierarchy differences between countries, In order to overcome the challenges, the individuals have to have clear communication, trust, and inclusive decisions. As an example, an international project team from Japan and the US arrange clear meeting rules and employs shared documents to solve time zone and communication barriers. According to ERAS conference and ARCSIP, in leadership communication, leaders have to adapt communication styles across cultures, employ clear, respectful, and inclusive language, and have cultural intelligence to support better global team performance. As an example, a global manager adjusts feedback techniques by giving written feedback instead of public criticism to respect his or her Asian subordinates' cultural norms. And lastly, let's discuss about integration. According to Use Multiplier, in integration, cultural awareness strengthens teamwork and leadership, and teamwork thrives with cultural comprehension and clear leadership communication. By combining these two aspects, they guarantee success in international business. As an example, in a multinational company, the leaders promote cultural workshops and team building sessions that develop teamwork between regional offices. Now, let's move on to the next slide. This is a real-life example of local company that succeed because of communication factors. The company we are going to discuss is PT Datang DSSP Power Indonesia, or DDPI. As you can see from the slide, this company wins the HR Asia Best Companies to Work For in Asia 2025 and the Tech Empowerment Award 2025. The key factor to this company's success is with their relationships and also partnerships with the company from China. To strengthen their bonds with the Chinese company, PT Datang, the SSP Power Indonesia, or DDPI, holds some cultural events such as joint celebrations of Idul Fitri, the Dragon Boat Festival, Chinese movie screenings, and cartoon-based work safety competitions. Okay, everyone, this is the end of my presentation, and I hope you will enjoy it. Now, let's begin the analysis of case studies. Before we start, please take a look at the content table. Now, let's move on to the first case study. The first case study is about cultural barriers. Now, let's move on to the next slide. From this statistic data, we can see the differences in cultural values between Indonesia, Germany, and Japan in terms of power distance index, individualism index, masculinity index, uncertain avoidance index, long-term orientation, and indulgence versus restraint. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Here is the analysis according to Hofstede's theory. First of all, hierarchy and authority. Indonesia's high PDI means that team members may expect clear leadership and follow choices without much challenge. Germany's low PDI suggests more equality and openness to challenge or debate. Japan lies between, so the respect for seniority is moderate. Second, individualism versus collectivism. Germany's higher IDV indicates a culture of speaking up, personal responsibility, and straightforward feedback. Indonesia's very low demonstrates strong group orientation, deference, and preference for harmony over confrontation. Japan sits in between but leans toward group orientation. In terms of masculinity, Japan's very high score illustrates a culture strongly focused on achievement, competition, and defined gender roles or status. Germany also scores relatively high. Indonesia is lower, indicating less emphasis on overt competition or aggressive objective orientation. In terms of uncertainty avoidance, Japan is very high, meaning preference for structure, rules, clarity, and certainty. Germany is moderate to high. Meanwhile, Indonesia is more moderate, indicating more acceptance for ambiguity. In terms of long-term orientation, Indonesia's very high focuses strongly on future planning. Japan's high suggests strong future-oriented perspective, persistence, and adaptability. Germany's lower suggests more short or medium-term orientation. However, reliable data for Indonesia is less clear. And lastly, indulgence versus restraint. All three are relatively restrained in indulgence, with Indonesia in the last place, Germany on the second place, and Japan on the first place. Now, let's move on to the next slide. This is how cultural misunderstanding affects teamwork and decision-making. First of all, creating prejudice, stereotypes among groups. As what we have discussed on intercultural communication, people tend to interpret others' behavior based on their cultural values they grow up with. Therefore, this cultural misunderstanding may lead to prejudice and stereotypes among the groups. Second, no mutual understanding between the groups. Due to the prejudice and stereotypes between the groups, there will be no chance for mutual understanding in their work. And lastly, creating miscommunication in finishing the assignments. Due to the stereotypes and also the prejudice, there will be much more miscommunication that will lead to wrong decisions and also the inability to finish the assignments on time. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Here are the 3 practical strategies to overcome these barriers and improve intercultural collaboration. First of all, designing clear meeting rules. From the very first meeting, the Indonesian, German, and Japanese teams have to arrange a clear meeting rules to ensure the progress of their project. Second, adjusting feedback methods across cultures. The German team have to adjust their feedback techniques in order to make their feedback understandable and also clear to the Japanese and Indonesian team. And lastly, encourage every individual to share their ideas, opinions, and also their innovation beyond their cultures regarding the project. The members from every group have to be open and also do not need to hold back about their ideas and opinions beyond their cultures in order to reach a mutual agreement, understanding, and also to obtain the success that they are hoped for in their project. Now, let's move on to the second case study. The second case study is about cross-cultural communication for business. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Here are the cross-cultural communication values in advertising. First of all, there's incompatibility between the cultural values of the manufacturer's country and the potential customers' countries. In this case, is the cultural values of the Indonesian and the European countries. Second, there is miscommunication due to different communication techniques across cultures. The communication methods between Indonesia and European is like day and night because due to different history and also from cultural lifestyle. And lastly, decreasing chances to reach larger global markets. This failure decreasing the chances for tropical craft to reach larger global markets such as the United States and so on. Now, let's move on to the next slide. From this marketing data, we are going to compare advertisement from Asia and Europe. From Asia, we have Indonesia, and from Europe, we have Switzerland. Let's take a look at Indonesian advertisement first. As we can see from the Indonesian advertisement, the design is too exaggerated and with too much detail. As for the Swiss advertisement, it's very simple with only necessary information about the service. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Here are how cultural values influence the campaign's effectiveness. This is from Hall's theory. First, individualism versus collectivism. The advertisement with collectivist cultural values from Indonesia is inappropriate according to the European individualist cultural values in general. And lastly, high context versus low context communication. The potential customers from Europe who embrace low context cultures aren't able to understand or be interested in the implicit message of the advertisement and only prefer a more straightforward advertising. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Here is a revised marketing strategy for tropical craft. They have to create an advertisement focusing on the individual values and guarantee of the product qualities with a classic yet attractive design that matches the taste, style, and cultures in European countries. Now, let's move on to the last case study. The last case study is about nonverbal communication. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Here are the identification of the nonverbal communication issues. First of all, time orientation and gestures. The American representative's frequent act of checking his watch was perceived by the Arabic client as a sign of boredom, impatience, or disinterest. Second, personal space. American culture considers maintaining a wide physical distance as respectful. However, in the Arabian culture, it can be seen as cold or distant behavior, signaling a lack of trust or engagement. And lastly, eye contact and body language. Even though not explicitly mentioned, it is possible that limited eye contact or reserved gestures from the American side reinforced the Arabic client's perception of detachment. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Here are the research findings and cultural norms. First of all, time perception. According to Hall, in American culture, time is considered as linear and monochronic, emphasizing punctuality, scheduling, and efficiency. Americans often associate promptness with professionalism. However, Arabic cultures consider time as polychronic, meaning relationships and interactions is first over strict schedules. They value personal connection more than adherent to time constraint. Second, personal distance. According to Knapp et al., Americans typically maintain 18 to 48 inches of personal distance during professional interactions. On the contrary, Arabians often stand closer during conversations to convey warmth, sincerity, and mutual respect. They consider stepping back as discomfort or lack of trust signal. And lastly, gestures and nonverbal cues. The Middle Eastern cultures can misinterpret checking a watch, crossing arms, or glazing away during conversation as disinterest or dismissiveness. A straightforward, sustained eye contact is valued in Arabian culture as a sign of attentiveness and respect, while Americans may moderate eye contact to avoid looking intrusive. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Cross-cultural differences in nonverbal signals and their influence on business. Nonverbal communication varies greatly across cultures and significantly influence trust building, relationship, and negotiation results. In high-context cultures, such as Arabian countries, communication depends heavily on nonverbal cues, tone, and context. Personal relationships are the base of successful business agreements. On the other hand, in low-context cultures, such as the US, messages are conveyed more through explicit verbal communication, and efficiency often outweighs relational factors. When nonverbal signals are misinterpreted, trust worsens, and perceived disrespect undermines teamwork. Successful cross-cultural communication, thus, relies not only on speech, but also on unified body language, eye contact, gestures, and proxemics with the cultural expectations of the counterpart. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Here are the communication strategies to prevent similar issues in future cross-cultural meetings. First, cultural awareness training. Representatives have to be trained to comprehend key cultural values and nonverbal norms of their international clients before entering negotiations. Second, adapt communication techniques. The American representative have to adopt a more relational approach by maintaining precise eye contact, reducing physical distance, and refraining from checking time devices during their discussions with their clients. Third, creating personal relationship first. In Arabic business culture, establishing trust and personal relationships is important before discussing contracts or deadlines. Small talk, hospitality, and demonstrating genuine interest improve positive interactions. Fourth, observe and mirror nonverbal cues. Both the American and Arabic representatives have to pay attention to each other's posture, distance, and tone and adjust accordingly to show respect and empathy. And lastly, clarify expectations first. Both of the representatives have to discuss meeting structure, time constraints, and communication preference at the beginning to avoid misinterpretation at the end. Okay, everyone, that's the end of the case studies, and I hope you all enjoyed. Until next time, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.